18 islands in the North Atlantic, halfway between Iceland and Norway, closer to Scotland than Copenhagen, though Denmark claims them. The Faroe Islands are cliffs rising 600 meters straight from the ocean. Waterfalls pouring directly into the sea. Villages of 200 people clinging to hillsides where nothing should survive. Turf-roofed houses that look grown from the earth, not built on it. Sheep outnumbering humans 2 to 1. Weather changing every 15 minutes. Fog rolling in without warning. Rain falling sideways. Sun breaking through for 30 seconds of golden light before the clouds return. This is Europe's best-kept secret. Not because people are hiding it, because the weather keeps most people away, because there are no beaches, no Mediterranean sun, no easy tourism. Because getting here requires commitment, flying through Copenhagen or Reykjavik. Because the islands don't cater to cruise ships or package tours. The population is 53,000, 98% Faroese. The language Norse-derived, the culture Viking, the identity fiercely independent, though technically Danish. The tunnels connect the islands, tubes blasted through mountains. Undersea passages linking communities that were isolated for centuries. The infrastructure is first world. The landscape is otherworldly. The Grindadrap happens, the pilot whale hunt. Controversial, condemned internationally, defended locally as tradition and sustainable harvest. The complexities don't fit in Instagram captions. The beauty doesn't need filters. 20 places, most you've never heard of. All worth seeing, all real. The capital, though calling it a city, feels generous. Tórshavn has 14,000 residents. The population concentrated on the eastern coast of Streymoy Island. The old town is Tinganes, the peninsula of wooden houses painted red, black, and natural. The turf roofs growing grass, the buildings historic, the government offices still operating from 18th century structures. The harbour is working port, fishing boats, the smell of fish and diesel. The industry, visible, not hidden. The streets are narrow, winding, the old quarter preserved, the new town modern, glass and steel. The contrast showing Faroe Islands' position between tradition and modernity. The restaurants serve Faroese cuisine, fermented lamb, dried fish, the food traditional. Acquired taste for visitors, essential identity for locals. Tórshavn is base, the hub, and the place where ferries depart, where supplies arrive, where the archipelago's scattered population gathers for shopping, services, a connection to the outside world. The waterfall that falls into the ocean. Múlafossur sits at the edge of Gásadalur village. The water cascading over the cliff, dropping directly into the Atlantic. The image iconic, the composition perfect. The waterfall is 40 meters high. The flow varies with rainfall. Sometimes powerful, sometimes trickling. The drama dependent on recent weather. The viewpoint is accessible. The tunnel to Gásadalur opened in 2004, ending the village's isolation, before that only accessible by mountain hike or helicopter. The tourism exploded after the tunnel, the waterfall becoming Faroe Islands' most photographed location. The drones hovering constantly in summer, the angles exhausted, the beauty undeniable despite the popularity. The village behind is tiny, 14 residents. The houses turf-roofed, the church white against green hillside. Múlafossur is Faroe Islands distilled into one image, the power of nature. The precariousness of human settlement, the beauty that feels impossible but exists. The lake above the ocean. Sørvágsvatn sits on Vaga Island. The perspective making it appear suspended above the sea, the optical illusion created by cliff edge. The lake actually 30 meters above sea level, but the angle suggesting hundreds. The lake is largest in the Faroe Islands, 3 square kilometers. The water drains through waterfall at the southern edge, Múlafossur, cascading into the ocean. The hike to the viewpoint is accessible, 45 minutes from the parking area. The trail maintained, the crowds significant in summer, the angles competed for. The compositions similar, the Instagram saturation inevitable. The cliffs are Trallanipa and Múlafossur, the heights dramatic, the drops fatal. The fence protecting tourists from themselves, the natural selection prevented by regulations. The view is stunning, and the photos never quite capturing the scale. The reality better than images, the experience worth the hype despite the crowds. The sea stacks off Vaga Island, 2 rock pillars rising from the ocean, connected by natural arch. Drangarnir is accessible by boat tour or by hiking from Sørvága, then descending steep cliff. The access difficult, dangerous. Several tourists have died attempting it. The path unstable, the weather unpredictable. The arch is photogenic, the scale impressive, the ocean surging through the opening, the power visible. The stacks are bird habitat, puffins, guillemots, the colonies nesting in cliff faces, the noise overwhelming during breeding season. The location is remote, the view from land limited, the boat tours providing best access. The perspective showing how the stacks relate to the island, how the ocean carved them from the cliff. How time and waves slowly reclaim what briefly stood separate. Drangarnir is Faroe Islands geology made dramatic. The forces that shape the archipelago still working, still eroding. The landscape temporary on geological timescales, permanent on human ones. The historic village, the oldest inhabited settlement in the Faroe Islands. Kirkjubøur is on Streymoy's southern coast. 3 structures dominate. Roykstoven, the farmhouse inhabited since 11th century, still occupied by the same family, 17 generations. The continuity, remarkable. St. Olaf's Church is 12th century, still functioning. Services held. The stone construction surviving centuries of weather. Magnus Cathedral is the ruin. The ambitious construction never completed. Abandoned in 14th century when the Black Death killed the bishop. The walls standing roofless, the Gothic arches pointing at sky, the ambition visible in the remains. The village is tiny, the history enormous, the archaeological evidence showing settlement from Viking age. And the continuity of habitation proving Faroe Islands' viable location despite the harshness. Kirkjubøur is pilgrimage for Faroese, the history tangible. The connection to ancestors maintained through stones and stories. The village built around a natural gorge. Gjögv is on Eysturoy Island's northern tip. The gorge cutting through the rock, creating natural harbor, the boats sheltered, the location chosen for this protection. The gorge is 200 meters long, steep walls, the water surging in at high tide. The access to ocean direct, but protected from worst storms. The village is photogenic, the houses scattered on the hillside, colorful against green grass, the church visible from the harbor. The hiking is excellent, the trails leading to viewpoints, the cliffs high, the ocean far below. The perspective showing the village's isolation, how it sits at the edge of habitability. The population is 49, the services minimal, the economy, fishing and tourism. And the balance shifting toward visitors as younger residents leave for opportunities in Tórshavn. Gjögv is authentic, picturesque, the tourism managed by residents. The experience intimate, the scale small enough that crowds feel invasive. The westernmost island, the Puffin capital, the most difficult to reach. Mykines requires ferry from Sørvágsvatn or helicopter from Vágar. The ferry schedule dependent on sea conditions, cancellations common, the weather controlling access, visitors sometimes stranded for days. The island has 9 permanent residents, the population dropping from hundreds in previous centuries. The isolation and difficulty making modern life impossible for all but the most committed. The Puffins arrive in summer, thousands nesting on Mykines Olmur. The small island connected by footbridge, the access permitted but regulated, the birds habituated to humans, the photography easy, the ethical questions about disturbance ongoing. The lighthouse sits on Mykines Olmur, the location spectacular, the keeper's job automated, the building maintained. And Mykines is Faroe Islands at their most extreme, the beauty undeniable, the access challenging, the reward proportional to the effort, the experience earned not bought. The tallest waterfall in the Faroe Islands. Fossa cascades down the cliff on Streymoy Island. 140 meters of nearly vertical drop, the water atomizing before reaching the bottom, the spray visible from kilometers away. The waterfall is visible from the main road, the parking area small, the walk to the base short, the access easy, making Fossa popular with tourists unwilling or unable to hike to remote locations. The power varies with rainfall, the flow dramatic after storms, the cliff face running with multiple streams, the sight impressive. In winter, the waterfall sometimes freezes, the ice formations spectacular, the danger from falling ice keeping visitors back. The setting is less dramatic than Múlafossur, the waterfall falling to hillside, not ocean, the composition less perfect. But the height compensates, and the scale impressive, the power of falling water demonstrating erosion's constant work. The landscape slowly changing, the mountains gradually lowering, geology's patience outlasting human observation. The Flute Island, named for the shape, long and narrow, the valleys parallel like flute holes. Kalsoy is accessible by ferry from Klaksvík, the drive north requiring 4 tunnels, each connecting villages that were isolated until mid-20th century. The island is mountainous, the villages tiny, Húsar, Mikladalur, Trolanes. The populations measured in dozens, the services minimal, the existence marginal. The island's eastern side is uninhabited, the cliffs dropping to ocean, the access impossible, the seabirds claiming the territory humans cannot. The hiking is spectacular, the trails along cliff tops, the views across to Kunoy and Bordoy Islands, the perspective showing the archipelago's geography, how the islands cluster, how the channels between them funnel wind and waves. Kalsoy is depopulating, the young leaving, and the villages surviving on stubbornness, subsidies, the determination of remaining residents who refuse to abandon homes their families occupied for centuries. The lighthouse at the northern tip of Kalsoy Island, the most photographed lighthouse in the Faroe Islands. Kalur is reached by 45-minute hike from Trolanes village. The trail's steep, exposed, the weather dangerous when fog or rain arrives, the visibility dropping to meters, the cliff edges invisible, the danger real. The lighthouse sits on a narrow promontory, cliffs on both sides, the ocean surrounding, the isolation complete. The views extend north to nothing, just Atlantic. The next land, Iceland or Greenland, the emptiness humbling. The sea stacks rise nearby, Kaluren, steep-sided rock pillars. The birds nesting on ledges, the colonies visible but inaccessible. The lighthouse is red roof on white building, the contrast vivid against green grass and grey ocean, the composition perfect, the angles infinite. The hike is worth the risk for those who check weather, turn back when conditions deteriorate, respect the environment's indifference to human ambitions. The village at the end of the valley, the inlet that's sometimes a lagoon. Saxon sits in a dramatic valley on Streymoy Island, the mountains surrounding it, the narrow opening to the sea. The tidal conditions creating lagoon at low tide, the water rushing back in as the tide rises. The village is tiny, a few houses, the turf-roofed church photogenic, the museum showing traditional life, the farmhouse preserved. The beach is black sand, the setting spectacular, the mountains rising steeply, the valley green, the colors vivid against cloudy skies. The road to Saxon is scenic, narrow, winding through mountain pass. The drive requiring attention, the curves sharp, the drops steep. The village is tourist attraction now, the residents tolerating visitors, the parking lot inevitable. The authenticity commercialized but still genuine. Saxon is postcard Faroe Islands, the turf houses, the dramatic landscape, the feeling of remoteness despite road access. The village on Streymoy's northern coast, the beach black sand, the sea stacks, Rissin og Kellingen, visible offshore. Jernavik sits in a valley opening to the ocean, the village small, 64 residents. The economy, fishing and farming, tourism supplementing. The beach is impressive by Faroese standards, the sand black volcanic, the waves arriving from open ocean. The surf occasionally good enough for the few hardy surfers who brave the cold. The mountains surround the village, hiking trails leading to viewpoints, the cliffs high, the drops fatal, the caution necessary. The village is traditional, turf houses, the church, the atmosphere quiet. The modern world distant, despite being 30 kilometers from Tórshavn. Kirkjubøur feels remote, the population small enough that everyone knows everyone. The visitors are noticed, and the hospitality genuine, the privacy valued. The village represents Faroe Islands that still exists beyond tourism, where life continues based on fishing, farming, community, not visitor spending. The village on Faroe Islands' northern coast, population 600. Larger than most Faroese villages. The services better, the viability higher. Heidi is famous for the sea stacks, Risin og Kellingen, the giant and the witch. The legend explaining the formations as trolls turned to stone, caught by sunrise while trying to drag the islands to Iceland. The stacks are 71 and 69 meters high, visible from Heidi, best viewed from Kirkjubøur or from boat. The village has football pitch spectacularly located, the field on the hillside, ocean views from the sidelines, the setting making it contender for world's most scenic playing field. The beach is black sand, the swimming possible for those who tolerate cold, the Faroese considering 15 degrees warm enough for swimming. Heidi is functioning village, not museum, and the economy mixed, fishing, farming, services, the balance allowing survival where smaller villages struggle. "53,000 people, 18 islands, 80,000 sheep, 1 million seabirds." The Faroe Islands are Denmark's, but not Danish. The language is Norse-derived. The flag is Nordic cross in red and white and blue. The currency is Faroese krona, pegged to the Danish krone. The autonomy is extensive, controlling most domestic affairs. Copenhagen handling defense and foreign relations. The weather is brutal. The average summer temperature is 12 degrees. The winter hovers around 3. The wind is constant. The rain falls 260 days per year. The fog appears without warning. The sun is rare. The beauty persists regardless. The tunnels changed everything. The islands connected. The isolation reduced. The villages accessible. The population stabilized. The economy diversified beyond fishing. The tourism grew. But the Faroe Islands remain remote, remain harsh, remain beautiful beyond reason. The waterfalls fall into the ocean. The cliffs rise 600 meters straight from the sea. The turf roofs grow grass and wildflowers. The sheep graze on slopes too steep for anything else. The puffins return each summer. The pilot whales are hunted, the tradition continuing despite international condemnation. This is Europe's best-kept secret, not because nobody knows about it, because getting here is difficult, because staying is expensive, because the weather prevents plans, because the beauty requires effort, because the landscape is uncompromising, because the culture is distinct, because the Faroe Islands don't need you to visit. They'll exist whether you come or not, but if you come, you'll understand. That's why 53,000 people choose to live on these rocks in the North Atlantic. Why they maintain the language, the traditions, the identity. Why they refuse to be Danish despite the subsidies. Why they stay despite the weather. Because nowhere else looks like this. Nowhere else feels like this. Subscribe to Global Lux Journeys. Some secrets are worth keeping. The Faroe Islands stopped being secret the moment Instagram discovered them, but they're still worth seeing.